Well, my guest today is pianist Mina Gajić, who is known for her wonderful performances. I think this is your fourth album that you put out from Sono Luminous. Yeah,
Yes, that's right.
we're going to talk about this album. It's called Sonic Alchemy, and really the title gives a little clue as to what's going on here. But I wonder if you can talk about the concept behind this album and the pairing of all these interesting composers. I mean, you've got uh, Petrus Vasks, you've got Arvo Pärt, and you have Wolfgang Mozart. And so, how do those three relate to each other?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Your contribution to our field is legendary, so it's a great pleasure to be here, and especially to talk about the album. Uh, this album is really about introspection and connectivity through humanity, through time. Of course, Sonic Alchemy is all about transformation, conversion of things. Um, Moving one thing from another, creating sound worlds. And there are layers to that. The most obvious one is the Pärt Mozart Adagio, which is the centerpiece. And then from that, we have Mozart,
Yeah.
who during this time when he wrote these two fantasias, had just transferred to Vienna and left the Archbishop's service. So this is really also kind of like an individuation moment for Mozart, a moment that will sort of lead to the pinnacles like the magic flute and Così fan tutte and eventually the Requiem as well. And so some special moments here are, the fact that these three Mozart works and Mozart paired are in minor keys, which is relatively rare. The sonata K280 is in F major, but the movement, the adagio, the second movement, is in F minor. And it has this very slow Siciliana rhythm, which in faster tempo could be a dance, but there is this funeral quality to it, kind of very meditative. And the trio version that Arvo Pärt wrote is dedicated to Oleg Kagan, who was one of the great interpreters of Mozart and Pärt's friend.
Yeah. And a violinist, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Well,
yes.
it's interesting to hear some of the nuts and bolts behind the album's repertoire, but just in listening to it, which I have done, listened to it from beginning to end, you have that Mozart Adagio by Arvo Pärt literally in the middle of the album, kind of in a blanket of music by Mozart. And when you listen to it, it just segues so nicely. I wonder how much went into the concept itself and the actual selection of the repertoire, because there's a lot out there by Petrus Vasks, there's a lot out there by Arvo Pärt, and you include two of his best-known works, I think, on this album. But I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just the sound and how it treats issues like time. I know time is a big thing in this album. I wonder if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yes, so there are, again, multiple layers of symmetry that we try to create with this album. We have two works of Mozart, two works of Vasks, two works of Pärt, and then the centerpiece is the Pärt trio, Pärt Mozart Adagio. So the idea really behind this album is to have this sonic journey where there's an opportunity to really settle into all the nuances of listening with white scenery, which is the opening. And then the other bookend is Spiegel im Spiegel, which has the whole idea of the infinite mirror reflections and sort of this sense of timelessness and beyond. It's kind of this indefinite thing that could just go on forever. So we start with something like that, and we end with something like that in a very, it's different, but there are certain connections that are there. And then Fratris has been recorded and played so many times, but the way Coleman plays it is a true joy to hear, because I think that this entire album has a certain level of stoicism to how the music is put in which order, to this style of writing that Vasks and Peart have in their unique ways. And I think that a lot can be sort of understood from Palk Ranier Carlson's liner notes, because he's so familiar with the Baltic culture and the landscapes.
He's a composer also?
Yes, and he actually studied in Estonia, and has many connections to composers and composition styles. In fact, his style of writing also uses these sonic effects that resemble bells. A lot of thought went into putting this together alongside my colleagues, Coleman, Itzkoff, and Yun Kim. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to the whole thing. It was intended as a long journey, and it's very successful in live performances. But it can also be listened to just work by work. What I love about recording things like this, and especially at Sonar Luminous with Dan Shores, is that, sometimes when we perform for a large hall, for a lot of people, for, situations where a phone might go off. When I recorded Sonar Luminous, I can really focus on every single tiny detail, and I know that it's going to come to life and it's going to be heard. Yeah,
well, it absolutely is heard in this piece. You mentioned your collaborators, and they appeared on the previous album that you did with the Boulder Bach Festival. I wonder if you can talk about your association with the Boulder Bach Festival, and also talk a little bit about your collaborators on this album.
Yes, you know how we're all separated by 6 degrees? There's 6 degrees of separation. In music, it's 1 or maybe 2. So we 3 share multiple connections, from schools to competitions to later Boulder Bach Festival and the Boulder Bach Festival recording, which came out also on the Sonar Luminous label in May of this year. But yes, so in 2015, I started an international chamber music competition, which focuses on the chamber music genre of a duo. So you think of, sonatas, of piano +1, we simplified it that way. And both Ewan and Coleman were winners, top prize winners, but different years. They know each other from Los Angeles, from Thornton School. It turns out Coleman and I overlapped a little bit at Rice University, where I got my second master's degree. And then there's a Boulder Bach Festival. So I've been involved with BBF since 2014, primarily as Director of Education and Outreach. And then in 2019, I became the Artistic and Executive Director. Wow. And when this historic moment in Boulder Bach Festival's 40+ year history came to make a commercial recording for the first time, Zachary Caratine, who is my husband and musical partner and collaborator in so many things, and I really wanted these artists who can walk the line, who are very contemporary in so many ways, but who also have training and understanding of historical instruments and practices. So that is how this entire project came together. And in fact, the 3 of us played a concert that had Mozart piano quartet in G minor in the program, which was also another eclectic program of, Lily Boulanger, Clara Schumann, Bach, Mozart. And here's another layer of conversion or of alchemy. This recording was supposed to have the Mozart piano quartet on it.
Oh.
And after everything was set in motion, our violist couldn't sadly join, and we thought it was just not going to be the same without him. So the project transformed once again. And I think that that sort of sums up the work that I do at Boulder Bach Festival, because we like to say that we present music across time and across cultures, spanning centuries and 500 years of music, including contemporary music.
Well, you're known for playing on historically authentic instruments like pianos of the 19th century and what have you. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the piano that you used for this particular recording.
For this particular recording, we used the beautiful Steinway D at Sonoluminous that was just perfectly adjusted and maintained. But yes, I have performed and perform on 3 historic pianos that are my own, 2 Erards, from one from 1840 and the other one from 1895, and the Pleyel from 1870. And it's really fascinating to be able to learn from these instruments and sort of apply some of the sonic qualities and ideas of articulation, pedaling, gesture, sound to contemporary pianos. And I think that there is so much opportunity to explore beauty across all of these instruments. And I just feel so lucky that I've had teachers and opportunities who nurture this early on in my studies in the United States. And that now I'm in possession of these 3 pianos that have made it to recordings, concert halls, and just anything and everything.
Yeah, I imagine that's a rather large room to keep all those pianos.
Yes.
in. Yeah. How did you get interested in playing the piano in the first place? I mean, what was it that inspired you to become a pianist as you are?
It was almost a coincidence, serendipity, so to say. I grew up in a very oppressed time of the recently fallen apart Yugoslavia. I'm originally from Serbia, from Belgrade. And, I almost never talk about it because that is just a small piece in the big puzzle of my life. And
Yeah.
I have so much gratitude for even those years and for all the experiences, even during the hardest of times. Accidentally, we had an upright as my family was sort of scrambling to figure out with the inflation what to do. My mother opened a little daycare kindergarten that was focused on the arts, languages. And so, she gave opportunities to a lot of professionals who were looking for work. And there was a music teacher who just thought that I should start going to a music school, and started me on with Bartók's Microcosmos as the first work that I ever learned. So that is the story of how it all started. And then I was so lucky to have a great high school teacher who studied with Heinrich Neuhaus at the Moscow Conservatory. She got her master's there. She was Czech, but lived in Serbia. And from there, I went on to the conservatory, finished my undergraduate studies, and came to the United States for graduate school. So that is the long version of the short story.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. You're probably the only pianist in world history that can count Microcosmos as their very first piano work.
Yeah.
I'm talking with pianist Mina Gajić, whose new album, Sonic Alchemy, is just out this month from Sonoluminous Records. She appears with the violinist Yoon Kim and cellist Coleman Itzkoff. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but how do you think people will use this album? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there are so many ways to enjoy art. I think that what is so beautiful about minimalist writing is that it can really have so many shapes and layers as the listener wants. You know, it's like sitting in front of minimalist paintings. What comes to mind is Mark Rothko in the Rothko Chapel in Houston, another Latvian-born artist like Vasks. You know, there are these dark black canvases, and the longer one sits in front of them, the more layers and the more depth are there. But that is not necessarily the only way one can experience them and enjoy them. And I think that this album has some parallel ideas to that.
Yeah. Well, I plan to get a glass of wine and sit in the dark and listen to the music later
Wonderful.
tonight. So
I like
thank
that.
you. Thank you
Thank you
for the
so much.
wonderful album. And thank you for the music. Congratulations on that. And thanks for joining us here on FM 91.
Thank you for everything you do. We really appreciate it.